What happened next on live television left Mark Levin completely speechless, and it may have just changed how America sees young black lawyers forever. The 76-year-old conservative radio host thought he had Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett cornered on national TV. He was dead wrong. Everything changed the moment Crockett pulled out that manila folder and calmly said, "Mr. Levin, let's talk about legal credentials." The studio went completely silent. What she revealed didn't just dismantle Levin's argument. It tore open a broader truth about how the accepted legal world often tries to silence rising voices. But the context made it even more electric. Just hours before the show, Levin had been backstage, boasting to producers about how he'd school this young congresswoman on the finer points of legal expertise. He was so confident, he even asked for extra airtime for what he called an educational moment. The producers, sensing potential fireworks, granted the request. Little did they know. They were about to witness what one might call the most complete intellectual takedown in the history of televised confrontations. Levin's team thought they had a bulletproof plan. They dug up that Prairie View A&M. Law wasn't ranked alongside Harvard and Yale, and they assumed that would be enough to undercut her credibility. They even prepared follow-ups. Why no Supreme Court clerkships? Why not at a big law firm? It was a classic play, and it had worked countless times before, just not this time. Before the showdown even began, the studio seemed to recognize something was coming. Camera operators adjusted their angles, lighting shifted to dramatic shadows, and the producer in the control room quietly signaled, "Keep rolling, no matter how long it takes." This was the kind of TV moment that makes legends and destroys reputations. A veteran floor manager, one with 2 decades in the business, later admitted, "I could feel the electricity in the air before the first question." Some interviews are just conversations. Others, gladiatorial combat. And this one felt like the latter from the moment they sat down. The executive producer, watching in the control room, made a split-second decision she'd later say was prophetic. She killed the planned commercial break. "You don't interrupt. History for advertisements," she told her team. Mark Levin sat behind the desk, signature scowl in place as he adjusted his glasses. At 76, he'd built a reputation on tearing down opponents with rapid-fire legal arguments and constitutional confidence. His radio show reached millions. His books were bestsellers. Tonight, he thought, this was an easy win. His research was minimal. Sure, Crockett had graduated from an HBCU, not an Ivy, but that was enough. He'd built a career on credentials, Temple Law, Reagan Justice, media savvy. His strategy was simple: question her qualifications early, assert authority, and coast on that assumed expertise. But what Levin didn't realize was that his reputation for attacking credentials had preceded him. Crockett's team had watched his past interviews, knew his angle, and had prepared accordingly. Crockett, at 43, was poised, assured, and ready. Growing up working class in Missouri, with parents juggling multiple jobs, education was sacrosanct in Crockett's household. She chose Prairie View A&M, not because she couldn't afford anywhere else, but because she valued its bar passage success, its community-first training, and its mission of turning students into practicing, impactful lawyers. By the time she graduated summa cum laude, she'd already argued before a federal judge and secured a civil rights settlement that changed local policy. After law school, she bypassed high-paying big law offers and dove straight into complex civil rights work, winning real cases that made real change. Her legal reputation had steadily grown, not in academic conferences or journal articles, but courtrooms and boardrooms where judges came to anticipate her meticulous, compelling briefs. Yet, because she hadn't come out of Yale or Stanford, many in the establishment still underestimated her. Tonight, they were about to learn how wrong that was. When the moderator wrapped the intro to their criminal justice reform segment, Levin pounced. "Before we get into reform," he started, dripping with condescension, "I think viewers deserve to know about the legal credentials of the person offering these arguments. Crockett raised an eyebrow, but held firm. She'd encountered this tactic before. "I'm happy to discuss qualifications, Mr. Levin," she replied, calm, collected, hinting that she was ready for whatever came next. Tension crackled in the air. Social media lit up with clips. This had just become much more than a policy talk. In the green room, Crockett's team watched, realizing they might not need damage control. They'd prepared for victory. Levin's attack was swift. "You went to some law school in Texas nobody's heard of, didn't you?" he said, voice slick with superiority. "Not exactly the kind of training we expect from someone preaching constitutional law," he added, as the audience gasped at the personal dig. Levin leaned in, energized. "Come on. When we're talking about serious legal issues, shouldn't we hear from people with serious credentials? I went to Temple Law, served in the Reagan Justice Department, worked with the AG." He paused. "What makes you qualified, besides being elected?" Crockett's jaw tightened, but she stayed collected. This wasn't unfamiliar terrain. "Mr. Levin," she said slowly, "are you suggesting that the value of legal training lies solely in prestige?" He fired back. "When it comes to constitutional interpretation and criminal justice policy, experience matters, and your background doesn't inspire confidence." The words hung heavy. Audience members shifted. It wasn't policy. It felt like personal defamation. Across newsrooms, producers scrambled to book legal analysts. This was bigger than politics. It was cultural TV in real time. Yet in the studio, while Levin's supporters nodded, others winced. Black viewers in particular seemed offended. Some white viewers, too, seemed unsettled. Crew members exchanged loaded looks. A senior producer later noted that Levin's toughest credential attacks typically targeted women of color, not white male guests with weaker credentials. It was a pattern. Crockett, meanwhile, reached beside her chair and pulled forward that manila folder. Deliberate, precise. "Since you want to talk credentials, Mr. Levin," she began, her voice steady, "let's do that." Levin's smirk faltered. This wasn't the usual reaction. "Temple Law?" Crockett said, flipping open the folder. "Certainly a fine school, but let's talk rankings, shall we? If prestige is your benchmark—" Silence. Levin's expression cracked. Crockett wasn't done. "You mentioned your Justice Department. Tenure," she continued, lifting a document. "Interesting, because I've got your employment records here. It shows you were a junior staff attorney for just 8 months before leaving for private practice. Hardly the senior constitutional role you've let people assume." Levin's face flushed. "Now, wait just a minute," he sputtered. "Oh, I'm not done," Crockett interrupted, voice unwavering, but with steel behind it.